Psych is the perfect TV show after Monk, and the two series even seem to be set in the same universe. For years, it was clear that Psych and Monk had a great deal in common, aside from their trendy single-syllable titles. Both are crime dramedies that follow a genius yet quirky consulting detective as he solves crimes and drives everyone around him bonkers with his idiosyncrasies. Psych and Monk often even took up neighboring time slots on the USA Network during their overlapping years on the air. Still, they may share even more than just this. Monk premiered in 2002 and has remained beloved ever since. The series stars Tony Shalhoub as a genius detective, Adrian Monk, whose knack for observation is owed, in part, to his obsessive-compulsive disorder. A few years into Monk's 8-season run, another similar TV show came to USA. Psych also follows a consulting detective who can solve just about any crime thanks to his observational skills. However, Sean, James Rodery, passed this off as a psychic ability. These two detectives are fundamentally different, yet somehow cut from the same cloth, and exist in the same universe. Psych's final episode all but confirmed that it was set in the same universe as Monk. There was a subtle reference to Shalhoub's character. Monk Sean Gus Psych. The final episode of Psych, which aired in 2014, saw Sean and his sidekick Gus move to San Francisco, and as they got settled in, it was mentioned that they could return to work as consulting detectives. However, Chief Vic, Kristen Nelson, said that the police department had already hired a new consultant who was currently in the kitchen, alphabetizing the pantry. Nothing else was said about this new detective, but the comment immediately alerted Monk fans. This could be none other than Shalhoub's beloved Adrian Monk. It had already long been theorized that Monk and Psych were set in the same universe, and the finale of the latter series seemed to confirm this. While a true crossover never happened, Psych set the similarities between these two series in stone. So, if you love Monk but haven't yet begun to dive into Psych, you can do so knowing that these two branches within the genre ultimately come crashing together. How Psych is different from Monk, but still the perfect show for Monk fans. Monk and Sean are different in every other way. Fans of Monk are sure to love Psych, but there are some differences to be aware of. The most prominent contrast between one series and the other is the primary character. Where Adrian Monk is socially awkward and overtly quirky, Psych's Sean is charismatic, charming, and entirely unserious. Additionally, Sean's work as a consulting detective revolves entirely around a massive deception. In the first episode, Sean is suspected of being a criminal thanks to his observational knowledge of dozens of crimes. To get out of this, Sean convinced everyone that he was actually just psychic. Sean's lie continues to grow throughout Psych, and a significant part of the series' plot is the primary character's efforts to keep everyone from finding out the truth. This clearly isn't a feature of Monk, where Shalhoub's character is unapologetically himself and sometimes brutally honest. These differences shouldn't deter Monk audiences from giving Psych a try, however. The shift is just enough to make a rather similar concept feel entirely unique. It's frustrating how Monk and Psych never got a real crossover. Monk only met Sean and Gus in TV promos. Monk from Monk and Sean from Psych. Custom image by Simone Ashmore. While we can assume that Psych and Monk take place in the same universe based on the former's finale, the shows never had a proper crossover. Technically, Adrian Monk has met Sean Spencer and Gus, but only in TV promos for USA Network. It has always been common for networks to do special promos featuring some of its most popular characters in scenes or sketches whose canon status is debatable. Unfortunately, those USA Network promos are the only examples of a Monk and Psych crossover that we have. Unlike other famous procedurals like the Law and Order franchise or the One Chicago shows, Monk never had a crossover episode. While the Tony Shalhoub series would often have famous guest stars, from John Turturro to Stanley Tucci, Monk was never part of a crossover event. Considering the TV shows that were airing on USA Network at the same time as Monk, there were not really a lot of options that would have made sense. A Monk and Psych crossover, however, would have worked perfectly and could have given us an unforgettable episode. How the perfect Psych and Monk crossover can still happen. Psych 4 and Monk 2 should be the same movie. The fact that Psych and Monk both ended several years ago does not mean that all hopes for a crossover are lost. That is because both franchises are still around in the form of movies. There have been 3 Psych films since the show ended in 2014, each of whom sees Sean and Gus working on a different case. While the status of Psych 4 is unclear, the Psych movies are a great example of how to bring beloved TV characters back without necessarily reviving the show. Monk has since experienced something similar thanks to Mr. Monk's Last Case. The Monk movie was set 14 years after the series finale and had Adrian working on one of his most personal cases yet while struggling with his mental health and finances in a post-COVID world. Despite the title of the movie, Mr. Monk's Last Case's ending left the door open for Adrian to continue solving cases. Therefore, there are no reasons to think a Psych and Monk crossover movie wouldn't work. In fact, between the uncertainty of Psych 4 and the lack of updates regarding Monk 2, a crossover film would arguably be the best way to continue both franchises.